Shearer, welcome to the first series of Stuff That Matters Now, a podcast brought to you by Collective Intelligence. I'm Harv, aka Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and it's going to be my great pleasure in this series to introduce to you a bunch of really cool people who are making a difference in the world every single day. Our job here at Collective Intelligence is to help curious people evolve and become more courageous so they can tackle the stuff that's needed to make this world a better place. Before we crack on and talk about the stuff today's guest had to share with us, a big shout out to Rob McDonald and his talented team at Tiwanga Estate over there in Hawke's Bay. Not only do these guys make international gold medal winning wines, they've helped us bring this podcast to your ears. Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Rod. Welcome back, everybody, to Stuff That Matters Now. I am in the Ministry of Health here downtown Wellington with Robyn Shearer. Good morning, Robyn.
Good morning.
She's so busy I had to get here at 8 o'clock this morning to interview you. It was like your PA was tried for months to get us together. So delighted to be here, Robyn. What is your title?
So my title, which sounds a little bit military, Deputy Director General Mental Health and Addiction at the Ministry of Health.
Well, it's tiring to say. And today we've actually got a spectator here watching us. So we've got Kate here. I have no idea why Kate's here, but
Kate's helping me out with communication because we're trying to get into the groove of how we do better communication at the Ministry of Health. And so it's kind of, I get some coaching from Kate on ideas about how we could get our message out.
I'm good at this shit. No? Anyway. So, welcome, Kate. Looking on from the sidelines, never been a spectator of sport before, but hey, let's give it a go. Robyn, look, in all seriousness, it's fabulous to be here. This is such an important role for New Zealand and so forth, and you know it's something that's very important to me and in my journey. And before we get into how you get here, I just want to go straight into this role that you've got and just define what it is that you do or supposed to be doing.
So myself and my team are leading the response to the mental health inquiry, Hei Ara Oranga. That's basically our work plan, the 38 recommendations that were accepted by government. Over 5,000 people's voices across New Zealand spoke to the inquiry team and panel about what wasn't working for them and what was working for them. So part of our role is to make things happen and I suppose deliver a work program funding to improve mental health and addiction issues for New Zealanders. Now, it all doesn't come down to health, but we have a big role to play. And straight at the day after Hei Ara Oranga was accepted by government, so it went through quite a process of this panel going out and down the country, going to marae, going to individual groups, people. We were on to big budget to make this thing happen. So $1.9 billion for mental health and addiction, which feels huge. And I feel the weight of expectation about that change that people are expecting to happen really quickly.
What are we expecting to happen?
I think in general, services can be better for people and more of them.
Yep.
So when someone feels a level of distress, they know where to go to, who to call, or maybe where to go online to get some help that's safe and going to work for them. If someone needs specialist help, that they get it and that it's of good quality and that they get a good outcome on the road to recovery. So I think over a number of years we have missed in growing investment in this area, and we haven't always understood the need for our communities. We've understood demand, which has meant people have been on waiting lists or being pushed around the service because they're not directed in the right way or not able to easily go somewhere where they know they're safe, they can get the right help. It may be a very quick thing or it may be a little bit longer term, or sometimes it's just about having a conversation with a friend, a neighbour. It's kind of hard for people to reach out, though, for a lot of reasons. So some of what we're trying to do is demystify this issue of mental health and addiction issues, and make it safe for people to reach out, and also have different options for people where and when they need it.
Yeah. So, Robyn, is our issues in New Zealand worse than other countries?
Not necessarily, but we haven't delved into that in a formulated research way for some time. So the last big study that was done on mental health need in this country was 2002, 2003. We are well overdue to have a deep dive. Yeah. So part of what's on our work program is to do another mental health study, because at the moment we are responding to demand coming in the door, but we're not able to tailor-make investment in services or understand what the level is that we need for different services across the country. So do we need more specialist high-intensity services? Do we need more community grassroots options? Suspect we need a bit of both, but it's really good to have the evidence behind us in order to make good decisions about how we grow those options for people.
So this is obviously a government department, so you're under a lot of scrutiny.
Yeah.
Right, from government and from the public.
This is the government's big thing.
Yep.
So there is a huge weight of expectation on us, and because a lot of the funding came to health, we clearly have to have a big lion's share of what changes. And my reflection is that this isn't just a health issue. This is a social, economic, community, cultural issue. So we know that people who have for years been through generations of unemployment, have poor housing and social conditions, are at high risk of suicide, mental health and addiction problems, end up in corrections, So we know it's not just a health issue, but if we can get our health services right, that's going to help the connection for people. So it's really important that we don't just look at the traditional DHB services and what we're doing, that we reach out to partners in social agencies, MSD. We can be doing more around that link between employment and mental health.
MSD is Ministry
of Social Development.
Yep.
Sorry, that's one of those
lingo.
government acronyms.
Yeah.
But yeah. So when, there's Ministry of Social Development have picked up some really interesting statistics that if people might go to their GP with depression, there is a pathway that people are ending up on where they get off sick, they get a sick note for a while from their GP, end up on antidepressants, struggle to get back to normal working life, don't get the help they need from antidepressants, because some of this is about how they get therapy or coaching to get them back on track. And if that option isn't available to them, there is good evidence to suggest that people end up on a sickness benefit and pathway back to not having a job, and their mental health deteriorates. And
now dependent on antidepressants and so on.
Absolutely. So the initial starting point for us has been testing what GP practices could do really differently, because people generally feel going to your GP is a fairly safe thing to do, and feel a bit more confident about having a conversation with their GP. I'm not feeling right, I might not be sleeping well, something's not going on, I'm feeling a bit lethargic. The GP can then go, okay, this sounds like it might be more than just a sleeping problem. Getting someone walked down to work with a coach or a counsellor, or even the practice nurse who has some experience and training in mental health issues, gets people on the right track. We don't have to necessarily go down the antidepressant pathway, and getting people back into what can I do to make my own health journey a better one. So this focus isn't just on people who are ending up in that kind of really serious space where they need specialist support, but it is about the opportunity for people to help themselves in that what they can do in their own health and wellbeing journey. I saw a really great evidence of this. I sat in on some health coaching sessions. So we're creating new roles called health coaches and health practitioner and health improvement practitioner roles. And these are a workforce that we train in how to do coaching, and they will go out to the waiting room of a GP practice and say, what are you here to see your doc for? And kind of get to know who's in the room.
How cool is that?
And maybe we can have a chat before you go and see the doctor, or come and see us afterwards. Let's do a plan about your well-being, and it could be related to diabetes, obesity, sleep, general well-being, and a lot of mental health issues are picked up there, and people get the pathway to dealing with that. And it seems like a really simple thing, but it's so effective. And some of those people have actually become health coaches. They've gone, actually, my journey to wellbeing has been so amazing, I'm going to help others. So we've also, in this, created a bit of a workforce opportunity for some people.
It's interesting that topic, because I, I've had a really tough year with physically because of I'm just about to have my 6th medical procedure in 11 months, right? Yeah. And that was planned and started with a heart ablation, which was straightforward before I needed to get 2 hip replacements and 2 hand procedures and a shoulder. And it's really knocked me around. And about June this year, my wife said, you need to go and see your GP. I'm concerned that you are, becoming depressed. And I didn't think I was becoming depressed. I just thought I was pissed off with life, right? I thought I was just... Anyway, I go to my GP, and we're going through all the physical bits and pieces and whatever, and she couldn't find some files, and she was new, right, and she couldn't find the system and so forth. And then I got up to my mental health at the end. I left it to the end, and my time was up.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I'm going, go you, right? I thought, go me for not bringing it first, and go you for absolutely missing this.
Yes.
And I walked out of there and I thought, what a great example. Now, as it happened, I wasn't depressed. I was just pissed off, and I was down and frustrated and all that sort of stuff. But I thought, wow, that could have been missed. That could have been serious.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that we have separated out mental health from physical health quite a lot. There's a lot of stigma still with saying, I'm not feeling right in my head, or I'm having trouble with my energy, or I feel pissed off. Yep. So I think there's something about GPs having an uncomfortable conversation, and about us all having a bit of an uncomfortable conversation about things that might, be hard to talk about. And
so why is it hard to talk about, Robyn?
I think there's a whole history around mental illness, stigma, discrimination. You can't see it, not like a physical thing. Yep. You can't kind of fix the broken bone and you're on track again. You have to kind of be able to deliver some personal things that are going on in your head to someone else and trust that they're going to do the right thing with it. And so there is something, I think, that I've always attuned to about, if you're working in this area, you've got to be able to have relationship with people, and you've got to be a good listener. You've got to be on to kind of that human behaviour thing and listen and get trust. And it seems really simple, but there's actually quite a lot of technique in that. Yeah. And we don't often talk about the nuance of how you get people to talk to you, how you listen, and then how you can reflect back and get someone on the journey to, you're okay, we can help you through this. A lot of other people have experienced what you're experiencing, maybe in different ways, and we can kind of get you on the right track. It's, some of the simplicity of this is giving people hope, giving people purpose, and knowing that they're not the only person going through it. Because when all you're doing is talking in your own head about your issues, there's no one there to moderate that conversation. So
I'm wicked. Some of the stories I tell myself
and we all do it.
Are magnificent.
Yep.
Right?
And we all do it at different times. We all have that voice that's a bit of a doubter in our heads, and it's when it gets to be problematic and get in the way of you being able to achieve what you want in your day-to-day life, or keeping you awake at night and for unreasonable lengths of time. Everyone goes through that at some point in their life, and it goes through different stages. And so I think what we aim to do is build up people's coping ability for when that thing happens. Here's the strategies I can use, and usually they're the ones about looking after your well-being. And sometimes it's about talking to someone. It might be about doing an online program that you feel safe doing.
I had an interesting experience 2 or 3 weeks ago. A chap was on LinkedIn, and I put a post up or made a comment on this. And this chap I've known for years came back and gave a very terse response and challenge to me around this comment. And I ignored it. I thought, I just can't be bothered with that. It was just, And, he came back a week later and went, you haven't responded to my comment. And so I thought, all right, you want a response? And I basically said, I couldn't be bothered. And, but then answered his questions. And then I rang him. I went, what's up? And this guy is a very, he's been a successful guy in the financial markets and whatever. And I said, what's going on? He said, oh, mate, I'm sick of this bloody this and that and whatever. And had a really heart-to-heart conversation with this very, I was going to say a dominant white male type person, right? And he was feeling like shit, But how did that come out? Was this very aggressive, which sort of kept me away, right? So he did. Yep. He used a technique that was going to give him the opposite to what he actually needed. Yeah.
So people have a lot of learnt behaviour usually from childhood, from school or from life experience, and it's not always easy to get insight into how we come across and communicate, and it takes a brave person to be able to confront that sometimes. And then when you do, people go, actually, I've been feeling a bit awful, or, this is what's happened to me. And look, we know that there are more people who are experiencing trauma in this country, and I'm talking about physical trauma, emotional trauma, sexual abuse. Intergenerational, that we don't acknowledge enough. Yeah. And that has a huge impact on how you develop as a human being and your communication style and how you relate to others. And, some people have had to shut themselves off from their emotions and their communication points because it just hasn't been safe. So as a child, if you're kind of beaten up or you're abused, you learn certain coping behaviours, and often that tracks into adulthood. And how many people are taught how to communicate? You're supposed to, you're taught English and maths and science and all those things, but do we teach communication?
Those all words.
Yeah. So the good news is there's a lot more now in the education system around mindfulness, teaching kids how to talk to each other, how to, address rewarding and good behaviour, and that's awesome because that will kind of help. But this is a big issue, and we're not going to easily solve it by creating more mental health services, right? Yeah. So it is very much getting good parenting, educating people about communication and trauma and the experiences that can affect people's how they're feeling and how they're coping, and it's more than just growing mental health services. So as we're going into this program, I'm really mindful of that issue, that we can't leave that behind. It's not just
so you don't want to be just the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, right? No. It's dealing with the stuff up here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it means our messages around that become really important. Yes, we have to grow more services, more GP practice therapists, more marae-based options, and they all work and are good, but there is an issue about how we are as human beings and how we communicate and cope with stress and reach out to each other. And, I mean, the classic Kiwi male, you know.
Not looking at me, Robyn. Thank you.
It's straight in the eye, half. But it's not a natural thing to be going, I'm going to reach out to my friend and have a chat about I'm feeling a bit.
And then we've got this
today.
Nasty word called vulnerability.
That's right.
Right? And going, you need to be strong, you need to be vulnerable. How does that work?
Yeah.
That, it's a whole new world, isn't it?
It is.
And then you add on top of that this thing called social media. And, because I just, I look at what kids have got to cope with on this toxic bloody, no accountability, social media
That's right.
stuff. And I look at it sometimes and I go, who taught you to treat humans like that?
Yeah. It's scary.
Yeah. And I go, wow, I just, and the big news of the week, I became a grandfather on last Thursday. Thank you. Yeah. Big effort by me. And I look at this young guy and think, what he's going to have to contend with, my kids didn't have to contend with. My kids were just before that, that social media wave, and think, what skills is he going to need to cope with that?
Yeah.
Right, because it's vicious stuff when people just let out this torrent of whatever, and you can't see it, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm liking the discussion that is happening around the country about compassion. I just hope that gets picked up in lots of ways, because that kindness really is the answer for lots of things, and we shouldn't underestimate it.
Look, one of the best responses I've ever seen on social media was with leading up to the last election was from Jacinda Ardern, and this guy was being an ass, and she responded, his name might have been Kevin, and said, "Oh, Kevin, you're better than that."
Yeah.
What a stunning response, and I thought, that was a lovely response to this guy who was, just being a dick, right? Yeah. And go, come on, Kevin, you're better than this. Yeah. And I thought that's a great. I haven't used it yet, but I'd like to at some stage because it's gentle, but it's also asking the person to step up.
Yep.
It's interesting.
And in some ways, what you did with that guy is saying that wasn't okay, but what else is going on?
Yep.
I mean, that's the thing to start reaching out to people differently, I think. And it's not easy, though. I mean...
That's not a natural thing for me to do.
No, and it's not... It's if someone said to you, oh, Harv, I'm not feeling great, I mean, we all get a bit uncomfortable about that, you know. So I think there's something about us creating a skill base in our community where it becomes easier to
So where is that
respond.
going to start? Is that in the home? Is it in the schools? Where does that start?
Everywhere. So, yes, home, schools, workplaces. So, you know, Xero have done some great work. Craig, who's the CEO for Xero, has done some great work around mental health in workplaces.
Yep.
And this isn't a complicated issue. It's about saying, I might have a colleague who I see is struggling, reach out to them, have a conversation. Here's some techniques about how you might do it. And that doesn't have to be in just an office setting. Your farming neighbours, your gatherings, you know, it's just, hey, mate, how you doing? You're not looking so flash.
Yep.
What's going on?
Yep.
Now, not everyone will be able to be brave enough to say, actually, X, Y, Z, but if you kind of just do the reaching out thing, it works for people. When there's good evidence when people have seen their GP's not quite sure what's going on. The practice nurse might just do a phone call the next day if the GP's worried. It really works. It's simple and it really works.
Yeah.
How are you doing? Anything I can help with?
So a mate of mine, Johnny Heslop, has got a great term. He goes, yeah, so how are you really doing? Right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, if we say, you know, how you doing?
Yeah.
The response is, oh, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't mean anything. How you really doing
Yeah.
is another invitation to step into that.
Yeah.
and it's super important to actually to have that. Interesting at work, because we spend a lot of time at work, right? And so when I saw you coming down the stairs, Dave, and seen you for a while, right, and you've got this big new role, and I thought, I wonder how Robyn's going to look, right? Because I feel, as you said before, this is a big job, right? And coming down the stairs and you look well, right? And I take notice of that because of my work, right? And I get so my concern is people in these key roles like yours, who the hell's looking after you?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting experience coming into this role for me personally. So I'm very passionate about the area and I really want to make a difference. That helps. I've been working really long hours and I have had to say to myself, okay, we're through another week, we've got this done, because we've got vacancies everywhere in the team. I've got about 30 vacancies for doing this huge work program and it's very tough. And there's conversations you can't have with people when you just want to download about things. So, this week I've been to 2 yoga classes. That, some of that stuff I've had to talk hard to myself about. Is it more important to go to the yoga class or do another 2 hours on the email? And so I've just really had to talk hard to myself because the last few weeks I was getting really tired and I thought this week I've got to get that in.
Yeah. Because you've got to be, you've got to walk the talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to walk the talk. Right?
Yeah, and it's also that thing about connecting with the team and checking in that people are okay because the pace of what we're doing is immense. We are running to get the biggest thing for New Zealand out. And it's not just us. I'm going, okay, the weight of this is on my shoulders, and I know it's not just us, but we're kind of stepping out for others at times. So, yeah, it feels a bit scary some days. Yeah,
and Robyn, when I asked to have this interview, I didn't actually expect to get a yes. Yeah. So I was pretty, because I have no idea what it's like, but I can imagine how much pressure is on you to deliver. Yeah. And then when I got a glimmer of this is possible, I thought, I'm not going to turn this away.
Just to put a plug in for collective intelligence, because when I started, I had my team gave me some very good coaching about the interview process. And
Team Noble, isn't it?
Yes,
that's the
Team
name.
Noble, yep. As in no bull. And then when I came into the job, I was absolutely swamped, and I thought I can't carry on with the team anymore. Yep. So I missed a couple of meetings, and I thought, no, I've got to get my head back into this. So I've got a meeting coming up, which I'm really looking forward to, and I know that's another part of the wellbeing journey and the leadership journey that actually you need to step out of your day-to-day stuff and actually, sit back and support others, doing the reaching out. And it's the greater good, not just for me personally, but for everyone else. It's easy just to get locked into get your head down, look at your own world, and actually it's important you just step back a bit.
It's so true, and it's one of the, we try and deliver value for time for busy people, and the number of people say, I'm too busy to join, or I'm too busy to make the next meeting, and you go, really? Because you start when I get busy, I start believing my own bullshit. I start believing that these things are important, and when I get overwhelmed, I can't tell what's important and what's not. I treat everything the same, and they're both important and urgent. Yep. Right, and I just get all screwed up with that, and my mental health goes to the pack. Yep. And I'm trying to learn not to fill my diary. Yep. And to make sure that those spaces where I'm not doing anything particularly productive are still really important. Just to think. Yeah. And it doesn't look flash, but it's really important. Yep.
That very good strategy. Cognitive overload affects your mental health. So, and your well-being.
And I don't even know what that means, so that's good,
A busy brain.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's it's fascinating because your facilitator's Amanda, who is huge on this mindfulness stuff
Yes.
and
the trauma experience as
yes,
well.
and all that sort of And look, when she first started with us, I thought she was slightly crazy. Well, she is slightly crazy, but she's less crazy than I thought she was. And it's just it takes a wee while to get to to work out, especially a guy who's come from the farming scene, to go, well, meditating is good for you and being mindful and all that sort of thing. It's just like, oh, what?
Yeah.
It
just, it's like sleep. It's resting your brain a bit, like anything. Like when you do a lot of physical stuff, you need to rest your body. No different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, last night we had a great lunch in Carlton yesterday, collective conversation in Carlton. Was great. Stayed in Greytown with one of our team last night, and I normally don't do this, but I did some emails at about 10 o'clock at night, and that's a golden rule I never do. And I thought I'll just tidy this up. I go to bed, my brain's going.
Around.
Okay, and then I'm thinking, I've got to get up early and I've got to get to Wellington on time and all that sort of stuff. And then I don't sleep very well, right? And then I get here this morning, I think, right, no, I need to get a coffee and make sure I'm sharp for Robyn and all sort of carry on. And I go, if I carried on like that, in a week's time, I'll be toast.
Yeah.
And once upon a time, and I often say to people, I'm not sure how many years I went, but I went for dozens of years not conscious, just busy and doing my stuff, right? And you just get in this wheel.
Yeah. The effect of cortisol, there's a lot of talk about that, but that's adrenaline, is really negative on your physical health and mental health. So that's where you get hardening of the arteries and all sorts of things going on. But we get into this wheel of not enough sleep, then you've got to keep yourself awake with coffee and to keep on form. And it's just that impacts on how you process adrenaline through your liver, and it's a kind of a pretty negative cycle, and so people end up having heart complaints and diabetes and all sorts of things. So one of the best things I did, because I was on that cycle, I know a lot about this stuff, but you just kind of get into, you have to do that.
And it's an honourable thing.
Yeah.
To be busy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You wear it a badge of honour. Yeah. But one of the best things I did...
Badge of bullshit.
Yes, yeah. I went on a health retreat where I did a detox program for a week, and that's the sort of thing where I thought, I wish I'd done this years ago, to learn about the importance of sleep and food and exercise and taking time out for your brain, whatever that might be. It might be reading a book, it might be just socialising with friends or whatever. But it's people underestimate the simplicity of how easy it can be and how much benefit you can get from it, and you're more productive.
Yeah.
So you're not filling your brain with the noise, you fill it with the things that are important. You're better at prioritising, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So, Robyn, the team, so going back to the bigger picture stuff, so you're building your team. How far through that are you?
I've got lots of people in acting roles, but you might ask me about Carla's appointment.
I wouldn't know. Am I allowed to ask about that?
Yes, you can.
So so this afternoon.
Yeah, we're doing an announcement that that Carla is going to be our suicide prevention.
So Carla Nanagala.
Yeah.
Yep.
She's our suicide prevention director, or director for suicide prevention. So part of one of the things.
Shout out to Carla, who's also just come off. So she's just finishing her career as a coroner.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, which is a huge job in itself.
It is.
And
she's done some amazing work with community in her coronial role. And part of, the issue with digging into the challenge around suicide and working with suicide bereaved is, what was going on for the family and the person. And she's dug into that a little bit, and she's very passionate, and because of her experience in dealing with bereaved families and in her own community, about making a change and also changing the conversation for New Zealand. So, it's I think one of those things that there is never a simple explanation. People are complicated. We don't always know what's going on in their head.
Or their heart.
And what might tip someone into, is it a need to escape? Is it a need to take their lives? You know, what can lead to that? And it's a really complex issue, but some of the simplicity of what I was talking about works for people.
Yep.
And so in standing up the Suicide Prevention Office, partly we want to, one, change the conversation around how we get a message of hope, which might sound...
No, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, it might sound a bit glib, but actually it's changing the message from despair to hope, giving people purpose.
So you say that like it's I know when I don't have hope.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
When I don't have hope, you know, I can be in the most difficult situation. If I've got hope, it keeps me going.
Yeah.
Take that away from me, and I'm not very resilient.
Yeah, I heard from a young Māori man. We ran a number of Māori hui up and down the country last week, and we were on the marae, and he is 17. He'd had 3 suicide attempts. He'd been seen by specialist services. No one was really helping him. He went to a kaupapa Māori agency who do lots of wellbeing stuff, and he went, that's given me hope. It's given me purpose. They're getting me doing stuff every day that I feel I'm contributing to my journey and others, you know, reaching out to others. And it's those kind of things that can turn people's lives around. It's not getting stuck in the mental health system or the justice system. It's actually getting I can kind of give you a bit of hope, and you actually also then have to reach out to others. So it is also teaching people a bit of self-responsibility, and actually we all feel good if we help someone else as well. And that's where, you know, things like employment and you're contributing to your community does make a really positive impact for people.
So interesting. I don't believe anybody does anything else. This is a personal thing.
Yeah.
I've never done anything for anybody else. I do it for myself. So if I go to help you, I do that for myself essentially, right? Yeah. Because it feeds me, right? And so I'm really conscious of that, that I don't do anything for anybody else. I do it for myself. And even when it's helping other people, essentially it's for me, it's for my well-being. Yeah. And I feel a lot better about myself when I do that. Yeah. And rather than going, aren't I a good person, just acknowledging actually I'm doing it for myself, you know. And when we help other people, our mental health goes up.
That's right.
Well, it does with me anyway. Yeah, right?
That's right. And it's so some of the initiatives that we've got in the suicide prevention program are programs that go out to community, like Farm Strong is one of those, where you have a way where someone helps you connect with others and get some strategies to reach out and help support someone else.
Isn't that great in the farming sector, right? The most, you know, this autonomy is such a big thing. Mm-hmm. To see that that's being accepted and people are actually using that service, you know, is fabulous. Yeah. And actually going, you know, it's okay to do that.
Yeah. And we've got another one called Life Keepers, you know, so that's a really positive program run by an organisation called Lavar, and they go and do training for sports clubs or community organisations on how, if you're worried about someone, what you might look for, and then what do you do about it, and how do you reach out? And it's kind of teaching people how to have the uncomfortable conversations and simple techniques, and who you might call on if it goes further than that. So, I mean, I think the thing I'm mindful of is it's all very well to say, okay, I'm going to reach out and support someone. We then need to back it up with a series of services where people can get a bit more intensive help if they need it. So that's part of our journey, is growing those things.
So and look, I love Carla a bit. She's feisty and independent, and you know, it's and you know, she's had a really interesting journey of her own, and you know, I'm really excited about taking this role on. and it's new, and I just think, this is a whole new chapter for New Zealand, and I'm really excited about her coming in there because, I can't think of anybody better to take it on.
Yeah.
And she about 2 years ago, my oldest son tried to take his life, and that was and that came from nowhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was 2:00 in the morning. I talked to him at 6 p.m. that night, and we had a normal conversation. And I won't go into the details because that's actually not relevant. But what is relevant to this conversation was that happened from workplace bullying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And he was in the dairy sector,
yes.
and he was being bullied.
Yes.
And he's a tough kid.
Yeah.
Right. Now affected him 12 months later.
Yeah.
And he'd been in this frenetic period, went into a bit of a downtime, alcohol involved, wumfa.
Yeah.
And it's I'm so great. And he's been battling depression since then, and he's doing really well. But what's interesting to see his mates and so forth, and they're talking about it, and they're open about it, and there's no shame there.
Yes.
And I'm phenomenally proud of the way, he's coped with this, and he's going to be a better person for it.
Yeah.
And Carla rang me after that and was such, fabulous support for that because, she's had the experience through the coronial process.
And I think what you're describing is young people, and not just young people, but people think that is the only option they've got, that they're left with, is to harm themselves or, take their lives. So we need to change that conversation. Actually, the option I've got is to talk to someone or reach out or go online, because that's sometimes the best option for people when they're feeling a bit, I don't want to reach out to talk to a person. Go online, get some help. There's some really good programs to do that. So we don't necessarily make that as visible as we could or should. So that's part of, what we're intending to do. So hence Kate being here, because the way we communicate
this spectator.
Message,
she hasn't gone to sleep yet. That's a good sign.
She's taking notes.
What's with that? Oh, and she's got that writing you can't even read. Look at that. She looks like a doctor. Who is she?
She's in the right building. But yeah, the way that we start talking about these things is important in giving people options other than going down a path that you don't necessarily intend to do, or you're not making a good decision at the time. And yes, alcohol is a big risk factor. Intoxication, using drugs. So, that also the issues that we're dealing with in that area become really important too. So
can we just touch on this legalising marijuana in 12 months?
Sure.
Quick conversation. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, God. That may be one of those things I can't answer.
Is that because you're positional or you don't have a...
Yeah, I mean... Wait,
okay, all right. Yeah. We'll move on. All right, sorry, that just...
It's okay.
Apologies, because I think it's a really interesting conversation we need to have. And one of my concerns with New Zealand society is, are we up for having these bold conversations?
Yeah.
Right.
So I can talk a little bit about there are people who can use drugs and alcohol at different levels who are absolutely fine. There are people who have one puff of marijuana and they end up in long-term psychosis. And you don't always know that. There's a period in developing brains, particularly in teenagers, where
that's irrefutable. Right?
Yeah. So, we have to kind of weigh up all of those things about someone's well-being and how it may impact on them, and people need to be really well informed about that. And so I think the challenge we have, social media, I won't call it fake news, but there, you look on Google and you might get a myriad of information given to you about whether it's safe to use marijuana or not. And part of our role is get the evidence out there, make it palatable for the public and safety, So that's part of our role is evidence-based policy. It sounds really boring, but it's important for public safety.
Because we talked a bit about this before we started the podcast around folklore.
Yeah.
I get really concerned about folklore, right? Yeah. People come out with this stuff, and then how often do you have to say it before people start believing it, right? And the mainstream media are maybe not as strong as they used to be, and they're being replaced by this other stuff. And then you'll get other commentators that have got a angle, right, and they want to push their angle, and I sit there and I tend not to listen to them. But you go, so what is real?
Yeah.
Which is your job, right?
Yeah.
Is what is real.
And yes, and I'm struck that I've never been, I don't think any other part of health has so many people who have called themselves experts. So there's a lot of experts in mental health and addiction issues. And that's an interesting dynamic for us to deal with.
Actually, most areas of health.
Yeah.
There's lots of experts.
Yeah. So, we just have to push through that and go, okay, here's the things you need to know. And so part of our role is to make the information that we have easy to digest, more visible, and stand up with credibility. And it's not an easy thing to get right. And the other thing is that we have mass-produced services.
Just hang on, go back. Yep. What's not easy to get right? Which bit?
Being able to get the lines around public commentary or opinion pieces from maybe people who've had their own experience of mental health or addiction problems, and this is what worked for me, so it must work for other people. Right. Or you get, people who get on a wave where they're deciding they've got to go public with a certain thing, and this is what we need to do, and it just grabs a life of its own, and people sign up to it, not necessarily knowing all the facts. So part of what we have to do, we don't want to squash good commentary, but we do have to come in with, actually, here's what it's all about and here are the facts. And it may not be at times popular. I think we do have a role to play in having a voice for community, and it's sometimes challenging to do that from this, Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
Because we're a government agency.
Yeah. Oh, this is me just thinking here, the silence. Yeah, interesting times, isn't it? And I look at the evolution of mental health. I've got a sister who's bipolar, and I've talked about this before, and she had her first. We used to call it breakdown then.
Yeah.
When she was about 18, I was 12. We were like, "What is this?" And then we had this shame as a family and trying to keep it quiet.
Yeah.
Right, and don't let anybody know and hide it, and then then it turns up again, and then people start finding out about it. So we've made a huge amount of progress from there, and so we can make progress.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that we've got to keep remembering, that we can make progress.
Yes, and one of the things I was going to say is that we have mass-produced services for health and mental health. So it means you go in and you get a certain prescribed level of things, but you are dealing with people who have very different individual experiences, backgrounds, triggers for what might make them unwell. And the thing is that one pathway won't work the same for everyone of treatment or trying new things, or what has led me to have this breakdown is very different for everyone. And so we've got to have a skilled worker that is able to dig into that, or what's led to this, what might be the thing that's triggered this episode or this, and then how can we address it. And it's probably getting more options that are a bit more flexible available for people, rather than we're just going down this very prescribed pathway. When you end up in crisis, generally at the moment, the options are limited about what you can do to get help immediately. And we don't want to be putting a whole lot of people under a Mental Health Act piece of legislation. We don't want to involve the police, but that's what's happening currently.
Yep.
So we need to, one, try and prevent people getting there, but inevitably they will, because it's not easy to reach out for help, and you don't always realise the crisis that's going on in your head is suddenly escalating.
Yep.
So, we do need, when that happens, someone to do something quickly and to be sitting with the person and supporting them in what happens next, and family members.
Yeah. And then we've got this whole addiction thing,
Yep.
which is, we don't have time to dig into today, but people have said, who do you enjoy working with the most? And I say it is reformed addicts. I think they're just phenomenal how that they've been able to get through that and come out. The respect I have for them is just profound, and I think of their journey that they've been on to get through that, and the skills they have. And we've got quite a number of reformed addicts within Collective Intelligence, and you just see how developed they are as a human being, and you go, that must have been. A hell of a journey
really
to get
tough.
there.
And it can be a lifelong journey.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
They've got to work with it all the time.
Yeah.
But you see the self-awareness and so forth, and, within our teams, when they're in there, they're gold. Because they are so well resourced that the rest of us haven't necessarily had to develop. Yeah. So, Robyn, just quickly, I'm mindful of time, and Kate's here and she's looking at a watch and she's getting bored. No, she's not. Quickly, how did you get here? What's your journey to this position?
Yeah. I'm a nurse by background, and in my second year of nursing training, I worked at Oakley Hospital to earn some more money in my holidays.
Right.
And I was fascinated by people who were in there who were psychiatrically unwell, had really interesting histories. The brain's an amazing thing when you study how things happen for people. And these were people who were generally really unwell. But what struck me is I got home at the end of the day, but they didn't. They were locked up there for a long, long time. And we've moved a long way from that journey. But
so what year was that?
That was 1987.
1987, yes.
Finished my training in 1988.
Yep.
Then I went and did a bit of cardiac medicine for a while because I thought, I can't just be typecast into psychiatry. And then a couple of years later, I went back and I've worked in crisis services and patient care community settings, and then kind of got tapped on the shoulder to be a team leader manager. So I worked in DHB land, and then when I was managing people, I got really interested in this thing called workforce development, going, my service is dependent on the staff who are fronting the issues with people. And so got quite passionate about that and took up a lead role to develop workforce programs for the ministry. Worked here 12 years ago. And then I got the role at Tapoa as chief executive, where it was organisation between government and community. And we were able to do some good innovation around workforce research data around addiction, mental health and disability. Loved that job.
So it was up in Auckland?
Yeah,
That's when we met, wasn't it?
Yeah,
yep.
And a national role, but a lot of international connections. And it struck me that we need organisations like that to help government get a bit more agile in getting things done. And
that's a lovely term, getting government to be more agile.
Yeah,
is it possible?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some of how we contract these services is still a little bit clunky, and that's being worked on. But, I'm really mindful of that coming into this role, that agility becomes important. I don't want to build a big empire here. We don't need to. We've got really good organisations like Tapoa and others who can do work on our behalf and be speedy about it and use innovation. So it's important that I keep that in mind.
Okay, I'm getting the model now. Right. So it's enabling other organisations.
Yeah. So Te Pou can support our DHBs with different practice.
Right.
And say, here's how you can do it, like a technical assistant, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we've kind of got this new funding, we've also got a leader for change and innovation in our team.
From where? What background?
So currently that's Dr. Suhul Wright, who's a psychiatrist, but been a leader in planning and funding. So rather than being going down the clinical pathway for a number of years, she's been doing planning and funding of services and how that could be developed differently, and is connected really well internationally. So set up some of the services that we have which are peer-led, so people who've used services now working in peer roles to support other people in crisis, that kind of thing. So Sue's got a lot of experience in that field. And our aim with having that role is to set up change and innovation in every region as we're doing this growing new responses for people, because you've got to look at locally led solutions but with some national consistency.
And then on your shoulder, you've got your collective intelligence team, which has got a whole lot of innovators and so forth there as well.
Yeah.
That's going to be
amazing people. I've learnt a lot from all of them. I went and saw Ballard last week.
All right.
Went and visited the services.
Ballard's been interviewed in this podcast.
Yeah. Went and saw him and the mental health team at Timaru. That was great. We talked quite a lot about rural. And it's just some interesting, smaller communities can do more because they know everyone.
Yep.
And
you can get to people.
You can get to people. You can work strongly on your relationship networks. Just shouldn't underestimate how important that is.
Yeah. So why do you do this? And don't give me the passion thing. Why do you do this work?
Oh, I like it. I like people I work with. I want to make a difference. I want to make an impact. It'd be really good, as you leave a legacy sort of thing, but to be able to go, man, these are the services that are now available for people and it's working. People are healthier. I mean, you talked a little bit at the beginning about, before we started, about how do you measure this? How do you measure wellbeing? And Treasury have got a new framework for wellbeing and all of that. But I think it's the stories that you hear from people that become most powerful, like the young Māori man who said, this is what worked for me. And if we can hear more of that, and that's what I mean about changing the conversation for New Zealand, let's give one of hope, and this is what worked for me, not everything's terrible and I'm angry. And, I'd like to hear that shift across our country. And to be seeing and reading more of it. I'm worried, like you've said about social media, if we can kind of get to, this is how mental health have led the way for good things to happen to people, that's a great outcome, and I've done my job when I'm hearing more of that. We can do all sorts of measures around wellbeing, but at the end of the day, it's when your friends and neighbours have a spring in their step, and people are making a positive contribution to the country. I don't know, that for me that's about leading a pathway and saying there's lots we can all do about making a difference.
Yeah. So to round up on, tell me what your thoughts are on this wellbeing budget. Not from a political point of view, but the concept of it.
It is about bringing together a number of factors which can contribute to positive health outcomes for people. So it isn't just the mental health side of things, it's physical health. We've talked a bit about that. It is an opportunity that we don't want to miss. So we've had the inquiry which said this isn't what's working for people and this is what could work. We do not want to miss the boat. Using this budget, using it well, is really, really important. So we have spent a lot of time digging into what needs to happen over the next 5 to 10 years to come out in the pathway where things are better for people. That does mean investment. It means growing a workforce, growing new options, but it's also about trying different things that we haven't been brave enough to do before, or we haven't had the funding or thought pattern to do before. So the wellbeing budget is the stepping stone to getting to where we need to be in 10 years. It's not going to happen overnight, but what an opportunity.
And look, Jacinda did a great job when she announced and said, don't expect this to work, in the short term.
It won't.
It's a long-term thing.
So we all have to be a bit patient with that.
An opportunity we can't miss. I love that. I listened to an economist from the UN recently, and he was patched in from New York talking about the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, and it was quite alarming that no country is up to date with any of the measures anywhere. But he applauded New Zealand on taking on the wellbeing budget. Yep. I think we're the only country in the world that has actually done that, and he just went. And we forget that people look to New Zealand to lead change because we can.
Yes, they do.
Because we're little. And I get frustrated when people go, what does it matter what we do? We're so little, we don't affect the world. And I go, that is absolute bullshit.
We absolutely do. And, even though we haven't got everything right with our mental health system, internationally, we do okay. For some areas we're middle of the road. Some we're doing better than other countries. So my aim is to get us right to the top again, and would love to be able to tell that story.
You know what, Robyn? I think we're going to wrap up there because it's just such a cool way to finish. Thank you so much for your time. You've just been listening to an episode of Stuff That Matters Now, brought to you by Collective Intelligence. I hope you enjoyed listening to the fun stuff, the rugged stuff, and the complete stuff-ups that have helped this particular Collective Intelligence member evolve while making the world a better place. Do check out our Stuff That Matters Now podcast series on your favourite podcast provider, or visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz to get links to new episodes. Contact us if you want to learn more about how we can help you evolve yourself and others. Thanks for listening.